Hello everyone, welcome to a Make a Card Monday video. Yes, you are hearing this correctly. I'm going to bring back Make a Card Monday for a little while. I talked with a few people recently and they were saying, that's how I found you a million years ago. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring it back. Maybe it'll be fun. And Make a Card Monday back in the day, it was none of that voiceover. It was all real sound, like as I'm crafting. So hopefully that's going to work here. It's a different beast when you're not doing a voiceover because you really have to think on your feet. So today I'm going to be doing an envelope and a card. The envelope is going to be more involved. The card is going to be more simple. So I'm going to do a little bit of watercoloring, and because of that, I've got to have two different types of watercolor paper. This one from Canson is only 90 pounds. And so it's better for creating the envelope. It's easier to fold. But for the card, I need something more sturdy. So I'm going to use Arches Cold Press. This one is actually 140 pounds or 300 GM or GSM, and this one is only 185. So this is almost double the thickness. So I'm going to take, this is the last one in this one. Lovely. And then I think this is the last sheet. Oh no, there's two in here. So I've got one on this one. Lovely. All right, so first things first, I'm going to create the card base and also create the envelope. So my card is going to be my standard 4 1/4 by 11. So I'm going to cut this to 11 and cut this one to 4 1/4. And while I've got this out, I'm going to go ahead and cut another card, and I'll just keep that on hand for later. Okay, so I'm going to take card base and score it at 5 1/2. I'm not going to fold it down yet because I want it to be flat while I'm working. So I'm going to leave that right there. All right, and then for the envelope, which you can see there's a little bit of a color difference between these two, but it's not going to be a huge deal. I'm going to get my envelope punch board. All right, so this is the 1, 2, 3 punch board. They actually make an envelope punch board that's just for envelopes, but I got the 1, 2, 3 punch board because you could do a box in about, I've never done them, but you could if you wanted. Okay, so envelope, my card is going to be A2, so I need to cut my watercolor paper to 8 1/4. All right, if you've never used one of these before, they're actually pretty simple, especially once you've done it a few times, then you really get into the groove. So here's my paper that I've cut to the size. Over on the punch guide, over on the side, you can see right up here, under A2, it says, under punch guide column, it says 3 5/8. Right? So that measurements, we're going to take note of it up here, 3 5/8, that's right there. I'm going to bring my watercolor paper over to that point so it lines up right there. And I'm going to do two things. I'm going to punch and score. I forgot. There's a bone folder right here you need to take out. Okay, so punch and score, and I'm going to score. I mean, there are instructions over here, but it's saying to use envelope score line A, which is this one on the bottom over here on the side. You can see that score line A. So 3 5/8 up here. Then I'm going to score from this line, and you sort of just have to kind of start it and then kind of feel for the groove. And right there. Score and punch. This is going to take a notch out of the top. Okay, so now you're going to take this score line that you've created and you're going to line it up into this groove right here. And you can sort of like feel it kind of lock into place. I believe the measurements is about, well, it's going to be different for every envelope size, but it's going to be about right there. So I'm kind of like wiggling it, making sure it's in the right spot. It also just lines up with this point right here. So if that helps. All right, I'm going to come down from the score line at the bottom. Score and punch. All right, now I've turned it to the other side. So it should line up, in theory, back to 3 5/8. So I'm going to move this groove. See when it lines in, it kind of locks in. Sure enough, it's lined up to 3 5/8. All right, so I'm going to score from this end and punch. And then I'm going to line up, feel that groove where it kind of locks in place. Score from right there. Oh, I almost forgot to punch. I'm going to get that locked in place again and punch. Okay, so from here, if you want the flap of your envelope to have a point on it, you can leave it. But if you don't, and you want it to be a little more finished, over here, you can kind of see up here, maybe you can see it written. There we go. There's writing right here on either side of the punch. There's corner rounder or corner slitter that you need this side when you're doing like the box. We want the rounder for our envelope. So I'm going to go ahead and corner round all of these corners. And this is actually great if you want to round the corners on your card. You could use them. You could use this segment of the punch as well. All right. So there's my envelope. I'm not going to fold it up yet because just like the card, I want to work on it while it's flat. Before we do any stamping, I'm going to mask off just past the fold on all 4 sides. All right, the stamp set I'm using today is Peonies in Bloom from Elephant. This came out a few weeks ago. There is a die set involved. So let's see, do I want to use a die? I think I do want to use a die. I'm going to use one of the dies. My plan is to have this really large peony right there. It's going to be a really simple card. I'm just going to have the peony and then a small greeting underneath. So I'm going to stamp this one on some watercolor paper. All right, to get a really good impression, I'm going to use a Misty stamp positioning tool. And I think maybe I'll do a few leaves as well. So I'm going to move the peony into the bottom corner. I'll stamp a few of these leaves as well. And they're spread out enough so that I can die cut them later. I'm going to heat emboss these with white heat embossing powder, so I'm going to prep the area with an anti-static powder tool. I tend to not have a whole lot of embossing powder stick to watercolor paper. I think because it's just so dry until you add paint to it, obviously. So, but I still like to prep it. All right, using Versamark ink. And my cats are out in the hall freaking out. Daphne! I think they're in a playful mood. All right, so make sure this is in the bottom corner. All right, and I'm going to stamp this twice because I want a really good impression. Make sure that's in that corner. I'm going to come in and stamp again. I'm using white embossing powder from Burgess Monroe. I'm going to heat set this till it's smooth and melted. Okay, might be a little hard to see that, but it's there. All right, well, I've got all the stamps and embossing powder out. I'm going to go ahead and do the envelope now. All right, and I'm going to stamp all of these in a repeating pattern. Or not repeating pattern, but in a particular way so that I can stamp, heat emboss, and then stamp again. And that's because I'm not going to be able to see where the flowers are until the embossing powder has been applied. All right, so you can see that down the corner. All right, so now I can see where I need to put the next flower. Now it's time for all of the painting, and just to help my envelope dry flat before I fold it up, I'm going to go ahead and tape down these sides the best I can. And that's just going to hold it. It's not going to be perfect, but what I've noticed when I do envelopes is after I fold them, they flatten out quite a bit, especially when you put the final card in the envelope as well. All right, I've got my Magello Mission Gold palette that I'm going to be using today. Before I move on to any of the painting, adding a lot of color, I'm going to do an underpainting. So I'm going to get the entire surface wet of the envelope. And then I'm going to come in with a couple different colors just to get it moving a little bit. I'm dabbing off most of the color down by the flowers because I want those to be different colors. All right, I'm going to hit this with the heat tool just so I can move on. I'm going to start with this down here in this corner, and I'm wetting the entire flower, and then I'm just going to drop color in. So it's not going to be super precise. I want it to be a really free-flowing color. Being really careful as I add it because I want it to be more noticeable near the center of the flower. All right, now I'm going to come in and just drop some green shades in where I placed the leaves. And they're gonna look a little bright right now, but I'm planning to add brown to them. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a few little splatters of some of the different colors that I've used. I'm going to cover this painting over here so that I don't get anything on my flowers over there. So the envelope is pretty much done. I'm going to move on to just the flower. So I'm going to wet the entire area. And my water is obviously a different color right now. And then I'm going to drop in as I'm using the heat tool to dry the watercolor, I'm making sure that I don't leave it in one spot too long to prevent remelting of the embossing powder. When I tear the masking tape away from the watercolor paper, I'm bending it back on itself, like almost entirely, like it's bent back, and that helps to prevent any tearing. When I put the washi tape on the die, I try to not have it touch the actual die cut part. I want it to be on the die and then the area outside of it. And now I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine, which is a Gemini Junior. Oh, that flower looks gorgeous. Okay, now I'm going to fold my card down. If fact, I'm going to use a little bit of that washi tape to hold it closed down here at the bottom while I work. All right. I'm just going to have the flower be right there, and I just need to know where it's at so that I can do some stamping. I'm going to use my Misty again because this is watercolor paper and it's pretty textured. I don't want to get a bad stamped impression and then not be able to restamp it if I need to. So I'm going to use the Sending Hugs stamp set from Mama Elephant. There's some really great sentiments in here, and I think I'm going to do You Matter to Me. I think that's a really good one. I'm going to use the transparency grid from Simon just to help me get the words on just right. And because this has a really organic color palette, I'm going to use a brown ink. I'm using Acorn from VersaFine Claire. Just a really light, perfect. I think I'm going to go ahead and adhere the flower exactly where I want it. I'm going to put it on 2 layers of adhesive because I know I'm putting these other ones underneath. And I'm also putting the foam tape a bit away from the edge of the die cut because those leaves are going to go up underneath, and so I don't want there to be any interruption and make it so that I can't put those leaves on there. Okay, so put that flower right there. Just realized this is a little off center, but that's totally okay. All right, so now I can take this leaf and put it right underneath. Okay, so there is the card. At this point, I completely forgot that I was actually talking through all my crafting, so I stopped talking. It was completely silent from here on out. So I thought I'd just explain what I'm doing. I use a T-square ruler to draw some lines as guides while I write on Patricia's address. And by the way, Patricia did give me permission to use her address, so thank you, Patricia. And I'm using a Pentel Sign Touch pen. It has a flexible tip on the end. It's not a brush tip, but it's like a flexible plastic. So you can do some thicks and thins with your writing. And I'm going to speed up the video a little bit here so you can see all the way from beginning to end. But I did that more script style for her name and the street address. And then for the city, state, and zip code, I decided to simplify it and use just some cap letters and numbers. And I did that because that area between the flowers at the bottom was more narrow, and I knew I wouldn't have room to do that script writing all the way across. So now I'm coming in with an eraser, and I'm going to erase those pencil lines, and I should have waited a little bit longer because even though I was able to erase over the name and street address, when I got to the city and state, it was smudging a little bit. Like, it's not super noticeable, especially over that colorful background, but just, mental note, let things dry. So I put some adhesive on the bottom of the flap, keeping that pointed area free because that'll that part doesn't touch the 2 flaps once you fold it up. So just leave that area free from adhesive. And then I used my Teflon bone folder to press down the sides of the envelope and then fold it up the very bottom. So the envelope is pretty much created. I'm now going to put on the postage stamps, and I thought I'd give you guys this little tip. I'm using some vintage postage stamps, and they're the ones that you have to lick or add moisture to them. And in the past, I've sprayed a paper towel and then pressed the stamps to them to get them sticky to stick to the envelope. But I saw this tip on someone's Instagram post where they just used a water brush and brushed over the back of the stamp. And I think I prefer this method more than just pressing onto a paper towel because it seems to get more gummy. There's a little more adhesive to it. So I think I'll be using this method from here on out. So that finishes my envelope and card for Make a Card Monday. Hope you guys enjoyed, and please come back for additional card videos very, very soon. On screen, I have 3 more cards for you to check out. I hope you'll enjoy those, and make sure you check out the supply list with links to everything I've used today. They'll be linked down below in the video description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in another video very, very soon.